I have never been more certain that the Tennessee Titans will take an offensive tackle in the first round than I am right now. I'll explain why on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. I am absolutely convinced the Tennessee Titans will be taking an offensive tackle in the first round, and it's because of the pre-draft visits that the Tennessee Titans have scheduled. I'm going to go over every single player that the Titans have had a visit with. The Titans took 4 players last year that they had pre-draft visits with, so it's definitely something that they focus on. I'll go over each and every player that we know who has visited with the Titans so far and tell you what I think it means. Before I dive in, thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. And shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. It's one of the best weeks of the year here on the Locked On Titans podcast. I did my ideal mock draft yesterday. Today we're talking pre-draft visits. Tomorrow we're going over all of the whispers, all the rumors, all the noise surrounding the Titans. Not only the Titans, but the rest of the NFL. Thursday, I'll have a full draft preview, and then I'll have instant reaction videos for every pick. I'll have nightly recaps that recap what happened, but also look ahead to the next day of the draft. You won't find better Tennessee Titans draft coverage than right here on the Locked On Titans podcast. But with that being said, we do got to talk about these visits because I do want to give a bit of a disclaimer here. So what can visits mean? What are these visits? Well, it's not always interest in the player. It can be other things as well. But again, as I said, with the Tennessee Titans, 4 of the players they took out of last year's 6-7-man draft class were guys who had a visit with the team in some capacity before the draft. So it would be, while it doesn't guarantee that the Titans are interested in this player, and I'll get into some of the layers of that towards the end of the show, the Titans, at least in 1 year of Ran Carthon, have proven that they only do visits with people who they are interested in. And that is why I am convinced, I am certain, I am absolutely positive that the Tennessee Titans will be taking an offensive tackle in round 1, no matter what. I have thought previously that the Titans could take Malik Nabers if he's off the board. And I'm not saying that that's off the table, all right? But you look at these visits, the Titans are gearing up to find their offensive tackle number 1 in this draft. Number 1, Joe Alt, had a top 30 visit, also met with the Titans at the Combine. Now, a top 30 visit means that the Titans flew the player to Nashville, to the facility, to meet with them. That's a top 30 visit, okay? So Joe Alt gets a top 30 and a meeting at the Combine. You look, Olu Fashanu had a meeting with the Titans at the Combine. J.C. Latham had a top 30 visit with the Tennessee Titans at their facility. Talise Fuaga, top 30 visit at the facility. Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, top 30 visit. Patrick Paul from Houston had a meeting at the Combine. And even Jordan Morgan from Arizona had a Combine visit with the Tennessee Titans. So you look at that, other than Amarius Mims, every single one of those players, that's the top tackles in the draft. Again, without Mims, those are the top 7-8 tackles in this draft class. All right, so it is obvious to me from seeing this that the Titans know, hey, we need to go offensive tackle day 1. Whether they stick and pick at 7, whether they drop back and do a trade back, either way, they're hitting all of the different spots. You look at the top of the draft with Joe Alt. You look at a potential trade down area with Fashanu, Latham, Fuaga, Guyton, or probably not Guyton, but Fashanu, whatever, we're getting used to it. Latham, Fuaga, Then, you get to the end of the first round. Tyler Guyton, Patrick Paul, Jordan Morgan. Now, Jordan Morgan is a difficult one for me because his arm length, when the Titans talked about what they want in offensive tackles earlier in the offseason when the coaching staff got hired, one of the big things that was mentioned was length, okay? Well, Jordan Morgan has the same size arms as Peter Skoronski. So if Peter Skoronski is a guard because of his length, which Brian Callahan said before he ever got to the Titans, and then reiterated again once he joined the Titans, if Peter Skoronski is a guard, then I don't know how they could look at Jordan Morgan and him be a tackle. It doesn't make any sense. So that is a little perplexing to me, but maybe if he's there on day 2, the Titans want to get Jordan Morgan with the intention to play him at guard. Either way, Jordan Morgan is an excellent fit in a zone scheme. He is an excellent zone blocker. Backside cutoffs, reach blocks, crossing the face of the defensive lineman, great athleticism. Again, I think that you can't look at Skoronski and say that's a guard and then draft Jordan Morgan to be a tackle. I don't believe that makes any sense. But from just, the visit standpoint and where these guys are going to get taken, the top offensive tackles in the round 1, the trade back options in round 1, the end of round 1 with Guyton and Paul and Morgan, the Titans have covered their bases. And most of these, look, all top 30. Latham, top 30. Fuaga, top 30. Guyton, top 30. They're using a lot of their primary visits and their most important visits on the offensive tackle position. All right? It's just clear to me that it's going to be an offensive tackle. Whether they stay, whether they move, how far they move, it doesn't matter. And I know a lot of you guys are probably pounding the table right now saying, yes, duh, it has to be. It has to be. But I'm telling you, it's just not that simple, okay? Because there are other first-round prospects who the Titans have met with, So to absolutely rule out any other position would have been a little premature. But you start to look at these visits, and I'm sorry, like I said, I'm as convinced as I have ever been that the Titans will end up in the first round with an offensive tackle, no matter where they move to, whether they move or not. It's going to be an offensive tackle. I am to the point now where I am pretty convinced that if the Titans can't trade back and the good wide receivers are off the board, I think they just take J.C. Latham at 7. I think that would be a little bit of a mistake, but at some point, I know that it seems unrealistic, but if we get 3 quarterbacks off the board and then Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr. off the board, and it comes down to Latham, Fashanu, or Odunze, I think the Titans should take Odunze, but I think what the Titans will do, what I think they should do and what they will do are obviously different things or can be different things. I'm pretty convinced now that even if Odunze is on the board there at 7, the Titans are going to pick their offensive tackle that they like best. There's just too much smoke here. There's just too much. So the Titans have also met with some guard prospects like Cole Spencer out of Texas Tech, top 30, Christian Haynes out of UConn at the Combine. Garrett Greenfield was a guy that they met with at the Shrine Bowl. Greenfield may be more of an offensive tackle, but it depends on how Bill Callahan sees these guys. So the Titans have done a ton of homework on the offensive line, as they should. But again, based on what we know from last year, based on what we see here with these visits with offensive linemen, I am convinced that the Tennessee Titans will be taking an offensive tackle in the first round. Some of you don't want to hear that because you wanted the wide receivers, but I don't think that it's crazy for the Titans to make that decision at all. But I'm nearly convinced now that's how it'll go. But there are other visits. They met with wide receivers, defense, all of that. We're going to talk about that next. Before we do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets. I purchased a ton of tickets on Game Time at this point because at the end of the day, they have the best features of anyone in the ticket buying marketplace. You get all-in prices, which is huge for me. You guys know how it is when you go to buy tickets certain places and it says one price and then you click to checkout and it's way more expensive than it was when they were showing you the price of the tickets. So you don't have that problem with Game Time. Also, you get a view from your seat. They have a panoramic view, so you actually know what you're going to be looking at when you sit down. You also get killer last-minute deals with their zone deals and their flash deals. And then, of course, the Game Time guarantee, where if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. So make sure you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, breaking down all of the pre-draft visits that the Tennessee Titans have had. We talked about the offensive line, why I'm convinced the Titans will be taking an offensive tackle in round one. Now I want to move to the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to throw in a couple of notes about wide receivers here as we kick it off, but really want to focus on all of the defensive visits the Tennessee Titans have had so far, especially on that defensive line. Before I dive in, want to thank you again for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, tomorrow will be all about draft whispers. Thursday will be a full first-round draft preview. I'll have instant reaction videos to every pick, nightly live recaps on what to look for next and what's happened so far. You're not going to find better coverage of the NFL draft than right here on Locked On Titans. So get subscribed, folks. But moving on, we will dive defense, but do want to say at least, Malik Neighbors, Combine, Pro Day, top 30. All right, so the Titans are definitely interested in Malik Neighbors. I just don't think Malik Neighbors will be there, and we'll talk about that tomorrow when we talk about the whispers that we're hearing, because the whispers are turning into a shout. Odunze, the Titans met with him at the Combine. But this is going to go into what I'm going to talk about at the end of the show, what the visits mean and why it's not always what it seems sometimes. And it can be other things. Rome Odunze is one of the cleanest prospects in the NFL draft. Like, what is there to worry about? What is there to iron out? What is there to figure out? So there's no need to have extensive meeting time with Rome Odunze. You know what you're getting with Rome Odunze, a football player's football player. All right? Your favorite trapper's favorite trapper. You know what I'm saying. All right. Tez Walker out of North Carolina, virtual visit with Devontae Walker, I believe is the full name, but Tez Walker is just much easier to say. Not a big fan of him, I got to tell you, in my opinion. Not a big fan of Tez Walker. I think there are some issues there. Not interested. And then Roman Wilson also had a top 30 visit, the slot wide receiver out of Michigan, who I think there's a very, very good chance that we talk on Friday night and the Titans have offensive tackle in round one and then Roman Wilson in round two. I think that there's a high likelihood that can happen. But also the defense. We got to talk about defense because the Titans have some big needs on the defensive side of the ball. They need depth. They need starters. They need everything on defense. And the defensive line is where it all starts. Darius Robinson out of Mizzou had a virtual visit with the Tennessee Titans. I think he is squarely in play if he happens to drop to number 38. He would be a great replacement for Danico Autry. Now, the thing is, Darius Robinson didn't have great testing numbers. All right, there's no way around it. He doesn't really have the speed to play on the edge full-time like an outside linebacker. But again, that's why you look at him in the Danico Autry role. He can be like a 5-tech defensive lineman when the Titans are in their base defense. He can slide inside and rush the passer there. I think he can be like a defensive end per se, but maybe not an outside linebacker with that wide alignment and that pure speed. He's going to be somebody who needs to win on the inside with his power, his toughness, his strength, all of that. But I think Darius Robinson would make a ton of sense for the Titans because they need to replace that Danico Autry role as the defensive end in their base defense and as their interior pass rusher next to Jeffrey Simmons on passing downs. And Darius Robinson could absolutely do that. So a virtual visit there, a guy who I love, Houston Christian, Jalix Hunt. We talked about Jalix Hunt yesterday. I love Jalix Hunt. He has tons of potential, size, speed, athleticism. Like, he's going to give you everything that you want from a measurable standpoint. The thing is, he needs some development. He played at Houston Christian. You know, is he going to be able to translate to the NFL? I think that he can. But I think if the Titans pick up a third-round pick, Jalix Hunt makes a ton of sense. And a top 30 visit. So they're definitely interested in Jalix Hunt. Also, Cedric Johnson, edge from Ole Miss. had a 9.28 RAS score. All right, so freak athlete who, again, I've talked about this when I've talked about mock drafts. Some of these guys late, 6th round, 7th round, maybe even you want to say 5th round. Just it's a lottery ticket anyway. It's a dart throw anyway. The odds are you're not going to get a player that is a long-term answer in any way. So you might as well take a chance on high upside athletes and see that if you can develop these guys with elite athletic traits and have yourself a good player. You know what I mean? Like that. The other way to do it is to say, hey, we're going to take guys who had good tape and good film that aren't great athletes based on the measurements and the drills and all of that, and just think, hey, the guy's a football player. The measurements and the speed and all that, the athleticism may not be there, but he's been a good football player, so we're going to bank on that. So there are two different ways to look at it. But for me, in those late rounds, 6th, 7th, I'm just taking dart throws on freak athletes and seeing if I can coach them up, especially with this coaching staff that, in theory, should be better at player development. Mike Vrabel was a coach who would just get the most out of whatever's there. I don't know that he was going to elevate the individual traits of the players. He could just get the collective group to do the best that they possibly could with game planning, with in-game decision-making, all of that stuff. But as for developing players and getting the most out of each player with their individual skill set, I don't think that was a strength of Mike Vrabel. It was more of getting the most out of the team as a collective with his decision-making and his motivation and all that. So just different ways of doing things, I think, with the new coaching staff. And that's why I would love the philosophy of going after a guy like Cedric Johnson late in the draft. On the interior, though, T'Vondre Sweat. I know that I have been a T'Vondre Sweat hater, and I would not have him on my board if I was running a football team. But the Titans had a top 30 with him. So clearly there is some interest there, and I bet you that visit was a decision. Are we keeping this guy on our board, or are we taking him off our board? That was why the top 30 visit happened with T'Vondre Sweat. So we'll see what happens. There's no guarantee that we ever know the answer because maybe they just don't take him even if they want to. They just didn't get to. He gets picked earlier. Who knows? But they're definitely interested enough to where they got to figure it out, okay? And that was after his DWI, or whatever they call in Texas. DUI here, DWI there. I don't know. You're drunk and you're driving. That's what it is. So anyways, McKinley Jackson. I've talked about McKinley Jackson before. Nose tackle. Top 30 visit. I believe it's Mississippi State, if I'm not crazy. Didn't write it in my notes. But McKinley Jackson, I think, would be a great pick for the Titans late. In a similar vein to a Fabian Lovett, who I like a lot out of Florida State. It's a similar idea there with McKinley Jackson. And then you got Norrell Pollard, the defensive tackle out of Virginia Tech. Had a virtual with the Titans. Could be a late round pick as well. I mean, that's 6 or 7 guys just on the defensive line. All right. And then you look at linebacker. Junior Colson from Michigan had a top 50 with the Titans. I think there's real interest there. He could come in right away and be a green dot, strong side linebacker. I talked about weak side linebacker recently when we did the linebacker breakdown, and I explained the difference between your take on strong side linebacker and then your weak side roaming linebacker. And I think Junior Colson, the Titans don't have a take on strong side middle linebacker. They don't have one right now. I think that Kenneth Murray and Otis Reese are both weak side linebackers that are sideline to sideline guys. Murray, maybe you could get him to be take on, but I don't know if I want him to have the green dot personally and get everybody aligned. I think that's making him think too much. You want to just let the dog off the leash and let him go play if you're going to get the best out of Kenneth Murray. So I think that Colson could be a good fit there for the Titans. Smart linebacker out of Michigan. Antonio Greer is a linebacker who's probably going to get taken late. He had a pro day visited with the Titans at his pro day, a 7.19 RAS. So a guy who's a good athlete, maybe not an elite, great athlete, but a good athlete, could make some sense for the Titans late. And then the cornerbacks. I mean, they met with a lot of cornerbacks. And this is another position where now I was on the fence, but now I'm pretty convinced they're going to take a cornerback at some point in this draft. I'll tell you which cornerbacks they visited with, and the Titans met with a quarterback. I'll tell you who it is. Before I do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes We all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. And it's important to let that out, especially as somebody who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something, and you might even be thinking the same thing. Do not draft Brock Bowers, even if you had a meeting with him. All right, listen. You guys have heard that spiel before, though. And also, here's the reality. Most of us have bigger problems than who the Tennessee Titans are going to draft on Thursday or over the weekend. But either way, it's still important to get things off your chest every once in a while. And therapy can be different for everyone. But if you're you're thinking of starting therapy, see, I am already frazzled by the Brock Bowers conversation. You got to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible, suited to your schedule. Make sure you visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNFL to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNFL. Also want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It is playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball is in full swing. Tons of great golf tournaments. FanDuel is the best place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. I would tell you, go bet on the Nuggets sweeping the Lakers because they own them, as sad as it is to say. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, going over all of the pre-draft visits that the Tennessee Titans have done so far. We talked about the offensive line first and why I'm convinced the Titans will be taking an offensive tackle in the first round. We talked about wide receivers. We talked about the defensive line and the linebackers. Now I got to talk about cornerback because it's clear to me as well, like offensive tackle, the Titans are going to take a cornerback, and they'll probably take one with their top 4 picks, no matter which picks those are. The Titans are going to take a cornerback. Like, I am fully convinced. And you start to look at the list, and it's interesting. It is interesting. Before I dive into it, though, thank you again for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Ton of draft content coming for you guys this week. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed. But interesting, the Titans met with both the cornerbacks from Alabama, Tyrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry. Top 30 visits. Flew them into the facility, both of them. Now, look, Kool-Aid McKinstry, he could be available for the Titans in the second round at pick number 38. That has a chance to happen. He's one of the best press man cornerbacks in the draft. All right. But Tyrion Arnold, he's going to go in the top 20 picks. Would the Titans actually consider trading down and taking a cornerback after having Roger McCreary in the slot, after trading draft picks and giving a huge contract to L'Jarius Sneed, giving a decent-sized contract to Cheeto Awuzie? I just think it would be kind of crazy for the Titans to take a cornerback that early. But let me say this, and this is the overall theme of our last conversation here for the day, is that visits aren't always what they seem. Now, I made the point earlier that the Titans drafted 4 guys last year who they had visits with. So I'm not here to tell you that I have a blanket statement that is just true all the time. There are always exceptions. But what I will tell you is visits don't always mean what they seem, okay? And I think, especially Tyrion Arnold, having a visit with Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry, I think a question that definitely got asked during those visits, hey, what do you think of J.C. Latham? How was Latham on the other side? Look, Latham's offensive teammates probably going to talk good about him if they get the chance. His coaches, but the defense isn't in the meetings with him all the time. The defense doesn't spend as much time with him. They might have a different view. So I think that bringing in Tyrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry could be like a symptom of the Titans' interest in J.C. Latham, Alabama offensive tackle. So those visits, while they seem peculiar, especially the Arnold one, Kool-Aid again, Kool-Aid could be there, but they seem peculiar. But I don't think that it's a coincidence that the only two cornerbacks that are expected to be drafted high that the Titans met with both went to Alabama, where J.C. Latham went. We have heard all of the rumors about Latham with the Titans. The smoke is there. I've heard the whispers that they could even like Latham more than Joe Alt. And these two visits, they make me think that those are Latham checks as much as anything else. But other cornerbacks that the Titans have met with, Chris Abrams-Drain from Mizzou, top 30 visit. I think there's a lot of interest there. Jarvis Brownlee from Louisville, top 30 visit. Kalen Carson from Wake Forest, top 30 visit. Isaiah Johnson from Syracuse, met with the Titans as well. Maybe he's a safety. Some people view him as a safety. He's long. He's physical. He's tenacious. Some people view him as a press man corner, which I think fits perfectly with the ethos of the Titans' new defensive scheme. So all of the cornerbacks that the Titans have visited with so far are mid-round guys, except two, Arnold and Kool-Aid. Latham checks. That's what I think those are. Some other visits the Titans have that are kind of off the beaten path here. They met with Marshawn Lloyd and Rasheen Ali, running backs. Marshawn Lloyd out of USC. Rasheen Ali, I think, is Tulane off the top of my head. Either way, top 30 visits for two running backs who I don't think really fit the mold of what I was expecting the Titans to be looking for in a running back to go with Spears and Pollard. But, hey, could be surprised. Titans met with Bo Nix at the Combine. That's a peculiar one. But that could have been a check on somebody else who we don't know, maybe like a Troy Franklin or something like that. You know what I mean? And then the Titans also met with Brock Bowers at the Combine, which Brock Bowers, to me, you need the medical checks. That's what you need. Make sure, he's had some injuries here and there in college. Get the medical checks. Bo Nix might be the same thing. And let me break this down. This is what I wanted to talk about here at the end of the show. Sometimes a visit is a character check, like with Tavondre Sweat. All right, we've heard you're a party animal. You're a class clown. You're immature. You got the DWI. Let's bring you in here and see what you're really about. And see if we're, maybe more comfortable with you than we think. Who knows? People have different backgrounds, home issues, lots of stuff's going on. Jeffrey Simmons had character concerns, right? But the Titans got to know him, and they believed in him. So even though we made mistakes, they said, hey, we're going to bet on the man that you are. And look what Jeffrey Simmons has done. Been a consummate professional on the team, a leader, and a great asset to not only Nashville's community, but his community back home in Mississippi. So this is a great example. Also, medical stuff. Kool-Aid McKinstry has had some medical problems. Maybe that's a check on that. You know what I mean? There's plenty of different reasons where, hey, it's not necessarily that we absolutely are going to draft you, but we need to double check your medical. We need to double check your character. Maybe, like with the Alabama corners, we want to talk to you and really get intel on someone else. Also, consider this. When the Titans go into free agency each year, they look back on these scouting reports for these players, even though they don't draft them. So getting to know guys, not only for the draft, but for potential free agency down the road, that's important as well. So just keep all that in mind with all these visits. But again, I remind you, 4 players last year did visits with the Titans and ultimately got picked. So important that we look at all this. Did want to take one moment here, somber note to finish the show. As some of you know from Twitter, X, whatever, my aunt passed away from cancer on Monday afternoon. And I just wanted to, in her memory, in her honor, say that I love you, Aunt Brenda, and I will miss you. And thank you for believing in me. And I'm going to be doing, my draft coverage with her in my heart and in my mind. I was a big sports kid growing up. I played 5, 6 different sports all year round, always. And I come from a sports family that, cares a lot about sports. And that was always something that's important. But my Aunt Brenda really encouraged me to, dive into my creative side as well. I was in choir and show choir and musicals, and she always was more interested in that stuff that I was doing than the sports stuff, and always really encouraged me to follow my creative side and my art side as well. And that was very important for me as a kid without, getting much support from my immediate people who I needed it from. So, somber note, I know, hate to end the podcast that way, but some of you could probably tell, I'm sure my eyes don't look great right now, but look like I celebrated the holiday yesterday, but that is not the case. Just a little somber and a little sad from losing my aunt. And I know a lot of you guys out there have lost loved ones to cancer, unfortunately. And, just wanted to let you guys know that, you're not alone. And a lot of people feel that pain. And all we can do is stick together in that. But I love you, Aunt Brenda, and I'll miss you. And thank you so much for believing in me. But with that being said, that's going to do it for me today, folks. Sorry to end on a sad note, but want to make sure that I honor the people who believed in me growing up. But Titans visits tomorrow, draft rumors, Thursday, draft preview, and then complete draft coverage all weekend long. Can't wait to dive into it. That's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.